If dead white men didn't say it in the 18th century, it doesn't exist.
Look, if we want to include all of these other narratives besides the typical narrative that we usually tell of dead white men, we've got to get it in there now.
It seems you don't have to be president to get on a greenback. You just have to be an old dead white guy.
Ben Franklin is an old dead white guy. Alexander Hamilton, that makes him just an old dead white guy. Wow. What does it say? What does it say about somebody like me? I happen to be alive, a white guy. The whole point is to put people down based on their color, based on their skin color, based on their ethnicity. It is so preposterously stupid, but it has taken off, hasn't it? You know, George Washington is actually on the verge of cancellation. They want to rename George Washington University. Pretty soon they're going to want to rename Washington, D.C. And his offense? Dead white guy. Happens to be brilliant, was almost divinely placed here, brought us so much, saved, built the Union, and we honor him on the dollar bill. And that's another problem. Expect these old, dead white guys to come off. You know, he's also on the quarter. Do you carry around change anymore? There he is. What does it say on the other side? Tails, if you will. E pluribus unum. And the translation for that, I believe, I never took Latin, but it is from many one. Is that what we say? From many one. From many people, one body, one population, one country. Out of many, one. Doesn't that make sense? You know, everybody should have a good opinion of George Washington. We all have a frame of reference, common frames of reference. That's one of the things that helps make a country a country. That is about to change wildly. New to the quarter dollar in coin form? All right, this is Celia Cruz, talented singer, I understand. She died some 20 years ago in New Jersey, originally from Cuba, and that's nice. I know many people know who she is. I personally do not. I'm not familiar with her music. She's not a common frame of reference. I'm sure she led a great life and a great person, but does she belong on the coin? I don't think so. I don't think there's a new program to put women on coins. Oh yeah, it's in full swing. The U.S. Mint, Bessie Coleman, nice person, I'm sure. First aviator, African-American aviator. Was she? I don't know. We don't know any of these people. I'm sorry. One after the next after the next. These are strangers to us. How about Wilma Mankiller, by the way? Yikes. I believe she's still alive. These are various people who did various things in their lives, and that's fantastic. But to put them on the coin, I think that's a little bit much. Don't you? I mean, well, the mainstream media loves it, by the way.
I want you to see one of them is legendary Cuban-American singer Celia Cruz. On the backside of the coin, tail, you can see a depiction of Celia smiling while performing, and you can see her famous phrase, azúcar, inscribed on the right side of the coin. This is pretty amazing. Somebody that I was honored enough to be a friend of is now going to be on a quarter, and it's Celia. That's wonderful.
Well, I'm glad he knew her. Nobody else did. I mean, I'm sorry, a lot of people did, but a lot of people do not. And the anchor didn't fill us in on what azúcar was all about. So it means sugar in Spanish. And let's go ahead and put it up there. Azúcar, it was the rallying cry for people who worked on sugar plantations in Cuba. Azúcar. I don't know why he didn't bother to tell us that, but anyway. So George Washington and Celia Cruz, is there a bit of a stature gap? I would say a couple of trillion light years at least between George Washington and all of us. Maybe Celia Cruz is a little bit closer, a couple of light years than the rest of us, but still, right? Are they quoting Celia Cruz? Will they be in 200 years? Hey, I don't know. Will we be quoting George Washington? Will he still be in the history books? For the time being, he is. And he said amazing things like this. Few men have virtue to withstand the highest bidder. Apparently, bribery was a big problem back in the 1700s. And when I saw that today, a friend showed it to me. You know what I thought of right away, or who I thought of? Joe Biden. Does he have the virtue to withstand the highest bidder? Of course not. I mean, look, the circumstantial evidence is becoming overwhelming, and his taste for the finer things, like that silly Corvette he's driving all over the place. This is a man who at one point boasted of being the poorest man in the United States Senate, and he lived in the DuPont mansion. The DuPont Chemical Company, they're headquartered in Delaware, and somehow he got that house when he was about 32 years old. There's a name we have to become familiar with again. This is Archer, Devon Archer. Doesn't that sound like a pretty mysterious international man of mystery type name? So he's friends with Hunter Biden, or was friends. He's a regular guy. He's from Long Island, but he got into a heap of trouble. Former best friend, yes, formed Rosemont Seneca Partners with Hunter in 2009, and he was on the Burisma board. How about that? Now, he got in trouble unrelated to Hunter Biden, accused of pretty massive fraud, $60 million bond fraud involving some Indian tribe. The judge was a little bit conflicted about him. The judge said she was left with an unwavering concern that Archer is innocent of the crimes charged. Nevertheless, the conviction remains in effect, and he's been sentenced to 1 year and a day in jail. But he's not there yet, and he's poised to testify potentially in front of the House Oversight Committee. This guy was with Hunter Biden at least 24 times when Hunter called his father, the vice president, to impress clients. Hunter, according to him, was totally involved in Hunter's business. We kind of know that already, but if this guy says it, take a look from the New York Post today, Miranda Devine. Hunter Biden would dial in his father, then Vice President Joe Biden, on speakerphone into meetings with his overseas business partners. Devon Archer is to testify about meetings that were attended by Joe Biden, either in person or via speakerphone. When Hunter would call his father and introduce him to foreign business partners or prospective investors, one such meeting was in Dubai late in the evening of Friday, December 4th, 2015. While they were sitting outside at the bar, a senior Burisma executive phoned to ask where they were because Burisma's owner, Zlochevsky, needed to speak to Hunter urgently. Who remembers this Zlochevsky character? Zlochevsky, we talked about him last week in that FBI Form 1023. From him, it's alleged, how much was he paying the Bidens? $5 million a pop. $5 million for Hunter and another $5 for the other Biden, the father. So Zlochevsky, can you ring your dad? At the time, it was early afternoon Friday in Washington, D.C. Hunter then called his father, put him on speaker, placed the phone on the table, and introduced the Ukrainians to Joe Biden by name as Nikolai and Vadim, their first names. He also said words to the effect that Burisma bigwigs need our support. Vice President greeted the Ukrainians, but spoke only in vague pleasantries during the short call. And in other such interactions with Hunter's overseas business partners, Archer is expected to testify. That's the whole thing. That's the way it worked. You can't have the dad saying anything specific, but the whole point is I can get my dad on the phone. I'll handle the nitty-gritty with him away from you guys. That was on December 4th, 2015. That's important. For just a few days later, Joe Biden goes to Ukraine and tells him how America can't stand corruption.
You also have a battle, a historic battle against corruption. And it's not enough to set up a new anti-corruption bureau and establish a special prosecutor fighting corruption. The Office of the General Prosecutor desperately needs reform. The judiciary should be overhauled.
Why does he think that the prosecutor needs reform, that office? Because the owners of Burisma are telling him so. Next.
The United States is with you in this fight. Yesterday, I announced almost $190 million in new American assistance to help Ukraine fight corruption, strengthen the rule of law.
How's $200 million going to help strengthen the rule of law? They already have laws against all this stuff. Isn't that the last thing you want? $200 million into a country that can't handle that kind of money, that has a reputation as being one of the most corrupt countries on earth. This whole thing is weird. A month later, back to the story, Shokin was fired after Joe Biden threatened to withhold $1 billion in U.S. aid to Ukraine. Who remembers? Here's Joe bragging about it.
I said, I'm telling you, you're not getting $1 billion. I said, you're not getting $1 billion. I'm going to be leaving here. And I think it was, 6 hours? I looked, I said, I'm leaving in 6 hours. If the prosecutor's not fired, you're not getting the money. Well, son of a bitch. Got fired.
So this is exactly what Burisma was looking for. Absolutely. This is what they were pressuring him to do. It's in the emails.